Hey, this is Mike from the One Stop Co-op Shop with another Kickstarter preview, and this time it's for a game that I've covered quite a bit in the past. We're looking at the new faction expansion for Cloudspire. Quick disclaimer that I received no compensation for this review. For those who watched or listened to the podcast episode on Cloudspire, you already know that it's one of my favorite games from last year, with amazing variety in factions, great tactical choices, and that's including just the solo and co-op play, not even factoring in the competitive. So I was overjoyed when Chip Theory Games asked me to do some coverage of the new factions, the Horizon's Wrath and the Uprising. So how do they shake out compared to the base game factions? Let's find out and get to the discussion. I do want to note right off the bat that everything I played is still really early in development and could easily change. Also, I only got to play one solo scenario for the Horizon's Wrath and both co-op scenarios for the Uprising, so I've only seen about a quarter of the complete solo and co-op content that'll be ready for the game. And that's actually where I want to start our list of positives. The scenarios that I played were really diverse and different than the ones in the base game or the Grige, and really showed off a lot of the fun aspects of these new factions. I won't go into detail, and unfortunately I can't show you a playthrough. Chip Theory Games wanted to keep spoilers to a minimum, but overall they were fun, they were quirky, they were challenging, and unlike, to be honest, some scenarios I've played in the past, they had really clear, smooth rules, which is not always the case. But let's get to the most important thing here, the new factions. How do they look? We'll start with the Horizon's Wrath, the Sky Pirates, and man do I love these guys. One of my favorite elements about their play is the tough give and take of source-making decisions. They have these zero-cost minions called Swabbies that are great meat shields and even level up your characters when they die. But if they're defeated, you lose them forever unless you immediately spend 2 source. So you have to carefully watch how much source you have and decide whether it's worth it to keep these little guys around. There's a similar tough choice with the Swordsmanship ability, which many of the leaders and some of the units have. It can give your characters extra damage based on the number of enemies around them, which can really rack up to tons of attack. But when you use it and defeat someone, you don't get a reward for that kill, so it's again a tough choice, and I love that thing in this game. Besides that, the theme and mechanics and just general fun of the Horizon's Wrath is off the charts. They have cannons they can build in their fortress to shoot at enemies as they come over, or spires just reaching across the entire map. They can pick up their entire fortress and fly it to a different side of the arena and totally change up your opponent's plans. They can even pull the plank on their fortress at a steep cost, killing the enemy, attacking them. Oh, it's just so much fun. Now, looking at the Uprising, they're also a ton of fun and really one of the most different factions I've seen in the game. Unlike most armies, the Uprising only has a tiny set of units it can bring into play, but they get to use mercenary spires and leaders and units from the market almost freely like they're their own units and just buy a ton of them. This is fun in and of itself because the faction is always changing and evolving, and you'll always see new mixes of units to play around with and to find the best strengths and weaknesses of. But what I think I love most about the Uprising are the other new elements. A big one, totally different from any faction that's come before, is that their fortress is not on the map. Instead, they start with one warp gate, basically, and their leader can build more. That makes them more vulnerable, enemies can attack them from multiple spots, but it also gives them crazy mobility, even more than the Grige with their tunnels. They can just have a gate right next to your base and pop out guys immediately. It's wild. And their fortress has lots of cool upgrades, new ways to use spires, new ways to use landmarks. They can even put bounties on other units or give their units these really tough missions to complete, a nice risk-reward system that really shines throughout this faction. Like the Horizon's Wrath, they're pretty great. All that being said, there are some potential concerns you should be aware of before you buy. First of all, this is still Cloudspire. Yes, it's great new content, but if you didn't love the original game, I don't think anything here is going to change your mind. That's especially true if you thought the original game was kind of hard to run or you found the factions fiddly. I think these new factions are overall more complex, and the Uprising especially will confound newer players because since they have new units every turn, you really have to look up a ton of keywords, and it can make it tough for the player playing them and also players playing with them in co-op or against them in competitive. Another thing is that in the 3 scenarios I played, neither of the factions got to show off all of their tricks. Like the Horizon's Wrath couldn't move their ship, and a big one, the Uprising, didn't care about CP usage, so a lot of their fortress upgrades weren't useful. Now, this was also the case for the solo and co-op scenarios in the original game, so it's pretty much par for the course, but this does still mean my overall recommendation for the game holds true, which is that if you think you're only ever going to play solo and co-op, it might be a little too expensive for that. I think the game is at its best when you play some solo and co-op and also some competitive, because it's awesome in all those modes. But overall, I love Cloudspire. With Tainted Grail and Marvel Champions kind of falling on my list from last year, it might be at the number 2 or number 1 spot for 2019. Just a really fabulous, fun, tactical game. And these new factions are excellent. They really give you new, fun, amazing tricks to pull off, and I'm certainly all in for the game, at least for this new expansion, and I can't wait to see the other stuff that I didn't get to see in my demo, all the new fun things they're going to come up with. So at least for me, a big Cloudspire fan, the new expansion is a full recommend. Good gaming, and we'll see you at the next stop.